Hi, I'm Andy Pressman, Agriculture Specialist with NCAT's ATRA program, and we are at East Hill Farm in Troy, New Hampshire. And in this video, we're going to be talking about tractor maintenance and particularly preparing for routine maintenance. With me is Shane LeBrake, Farm and Equipment Educator, and we are with a Ford 1910 from 1985. And Shane, welcome, and let's get started. What do I need to know to start doing maintenance on my tractor?
The way I like to approach maintenance is to start by making sure I'm actually prepared to do the maintenance. And what I'd like to start with, because safety is always paramount, is safety first. So let's look at some personal protective equipment that we should have on hand when we're doing maintenance. And to start, it's how I'm dressed. So I've already accounted for my feet. I'm wearing steel toe boots. You'll notice that my skin is protected. I'm wearing long pants. I'm wearing a sweatshirt on this chilly day, but I've got my arms protected. Things are tucked in. There's no loose dangling things hanging from my person. I don't have hoodie strings or a necklace. There's no jewelry on my fingers or on my wrists. I don't have a wristwatch on. I'm not wearing any type of ring. And if people haven't thought of this before, they should recognize that even something as simple as a wedding band, which I know is very significant for a lot of people, it's made of gold, and gold is an excellent conductor of electricity. And if you're working around batteries, that can become a major source of an injury.
Sure.
And also, when you're wearing things as simple as a wedding band or a watch or any type of ring for that matter, these are things that can snag on things when you're working on really tight conditions on a tractor. So any person who has longer hair, or let's be honest about this because it's in vogue, a longer beard, you need to give some thought to this, because you're going to be into areas that are really tight spaces with a lot of things that could snag you. So just giving thought to that before we even begin. How are we dressed for the work? So I also have some things over here, some personal protective equipment that's worth thinking about. Hearing protection. We may be running tractors for periods today. I always use hearing protection whenever I'm running any power equipment. Dust mask. If I'm using my air compressor and using the blowgun attachment on my air compressor to do things like blow the radiator screen clean, there's a lot of dust that's going to be flying around, and wearing a dust mask to protect our lungs, critical thing. Eyewear. I do wear prescription glasses, so I have eyewear that goes over my eyeglasses and rests flush to my cheeks to prevent things from flying up into my eyes. I'm really big on anything that meets the ANSI regs, and the ANSI capital Z 87.1 eyewear spec is the really it's the gold standard for protective eyewear. You're going to be underneath the machine when you do maintenance, and you need to think about things dropping down into your eyes. Certainly when we go to change things like the oil, the engine oil on the tractor on a slightly breezy day like we have today, it's not uncommon for the wind to take that stream of oil pouring down and blow it right into your face. So we're going to have protective eyewear. Certainly we need to protect our hands. We're working around a lot of different things, so we have leather gloves, these rubber gloves, and I think I stuck them over here. When I'm working with fluids, I really prefer using nitrile gloves. They're disposable, they're cheap, and so I have these around all the time when I'm doing maintenance. So all of these things are part of the budget, if you will, for doing maintenance. Having these things accounted for in our checklist of, am I ready to do the maintenance jobs, all critical things.
Right. And so Shane, I'm thinking about my personal body here, but I also want to think about the surrounding environment.
Ideally, it's well lit, that we have really good light, because there are going to be places that we're trying to see into where if it's at all dark or obscured, it's going to be hard to get a good visual on things, even with a flashlight. So well lit can really be an asset on a work site. Ideally, it's level. Certainly if you're working with fluid changes, it's preferable that everything's level. Having a nice solid base to work on, as we're lucky here today, we have kind of a pavement surface, or certainly asphalt or concrete would be nice. If you have to work on something like gravel, loose gravel, or bare ground, I would want something underneath, well, on top of the ground, maybe even a sheet of plywood that makes it easier to scoot around on. Right. And then over that, or over ground at all, cardboard. I always have sheets of cardboard that I'm saving to put underneath my drain pans just in the event that there should be an overspill, or perhaps the fluids get blown in a direction or flow in a direction that I wasn't anticipating. At least the cardboard's there to catch that fluid. Other things to think about is just what is around the site that might be a tripping or a fall hazard. So you really want to consider the picture of the site in your mind and say, is there anything here that's a potential hazard? If you have a tractor with a front end loader like this one here has, and it's not one that's easily removed, and if I can, when I'm working on a tractor, I prefer to do that. It just opens up a lot of space, makes it a lot easier to get in there and work on things. Sometimes that's not possible though. Ideal is always have the loader off the tractor. If you can't, and you're going to mount it up, please get some stout lumber that you can chalk it up and make sure it's secure. You don't want this to come down on you while you're working, certainly.
Right. Excellent. And so Shane, what are some of the tools we'll be utilizing today to perform our tractor maintenance?
Well, I think the most important tool that everybody should begin their maintenance with is the manual for the tractor. So here we have the manual for the tractor that we're going to work on today. This is the manual for a Ford 1910. It's got some sticky notes on it that belong to the owner. This is a 32 horsepower tractor, 3-cylinder diesel engine, but certainly you need the manual on hand because this is going to give us all the information that both tells us what we should be doing and what things we need to do it with in the way of fluids.
And Shane, I know manuals can be expensive to purchase if you don't have the original manual, but it sounds to me like if it's well worth the cost, that otherwise if you go in blind and try and do it without this information, you're going to get yourself into more trouble and it'll be more costly in the end.
I think that's very true. I once worked on a smaller version of this tractor where the manual suggested it needed 6 quarts of oil and it was actually 4. Of course, we made sure to note that in the manual afterwards with pencil on the margins, but yeah, it's an important thing to start with. There are reprints available. You can probably find it online, if not through a company that specializes in reprints of tractor manuals. But if you're getting a used tractor in particular and you don't have a manual with it because it's been lost in the history of the tractor, I would certainly highly recommend that a person get a manual for that tractor.
So we have our manual and we have our safety gear, and so what are some of the other tools you have that we'll be utilizing today?
One thing it's worth recognizing right up front, that while this is a Ford tractor, and many of us think of Ford as being a US company,
yep,
this tractor was made in Japan. So all of the fittings on the tractor are quite likely going to be metric. So we're going to want wrenches that are both standard and metric. To start, the most common sets of wrenches we use would be a socket wrench set. So we have a whole variety of sockets here. These are all metric sockets. I have a whole set of standard sockets here as well. These are using a 1/2-inch drive. You'll probably want to have a couple of extenders for getting into places that might be hard to reach. So these snap on to the drive, and then you put your socket on the end. So we've got that. Occasionally you're going to need a breaker bar to get some real leverage on something that may not have been removed in a long time, or it's been exposed to a lot of moisture. You're dealing with rust, so having something like this on hand, a breaker bar that can help free up something loose. And in a real pinch, I've got a piece of metal pipe that fits over the handle of the drive for the socket wrench that gives me a lot more leverage. The next, I think, the next tool I really like having for my work are these flat wrenches. In particular, these ratcheting flat wrenches. And I prefer the type that's reversible. They've got a little lever here that you can switch to either clockwise or counterclockwise for tightening or loosening. So you can go either side. These have a really low profile, and in tight spaces where you can't get a socket assembly to fit in, these are real useful. So you're going to probably want to have both of these on hand, a set of sockets as well as some flat wrenches. So one thing I think is really important when we go to do our maintenance is, before even starting, in addition to reading the manual, is that we take time to look at the tractor with the manual in hand and actually find out where am I going to be working and what things are required. So when I'm doing my work and I figure out what is needed, I'm making notes in the margin of my manual that for this Ford 1910, when I go to do an oil change, the oil drain plug is a 17 millimeter or a 19 millimeter or whatever it is. And in fact, one thing I'll do is I will take my little handy Sharpie pen that's always in my pocket, and in addition to writing that note in the manual, I'm going to actually write it on the tractor frame. Oil drain plug, 17 millimeters. So the next time I go to do the work, it's already there. I know what I need. Speeds up the whole process.
Gotcha. Okay, Shane, so I've got my manual, I've got wrenches, and now we're over here, another toolbox.
Yeah, so there's a few other tools I think are useful to have on hand. One of my favorite finds in the world of maintenance tools for doing maintenance on tractors are these adjustable filter wrenches. I like the adjustable ones, as this one is here, that has these different slots that you can move the wrench into position for, because it allows you to keep a nice grip on the tool. Some of these wrenches are not adjustable. They extend, of course, but they're not adjustable. And so unless you have an extremely wide reach in the palm of your hand, it's difficult to get onto those. A wrench like this allows you to get onto a fairly large filter and still get a really good grip on the tool. So this is my go-to. This was a Craftsman brand, but other companies make these.
And Shane, one of the tools you mentioned that I just sort of want to back up on and maybe even relate more towards the safety aspect is you mentioned a Sharpie.
Yeah.
And I've also noticed you mentioned jewelry, but your watch as well. Are there other things perhaps in my pocket I should be aware of in terms of doing maintenance on a tractor?
Important too, and this is very common today, of course, but having a cell phone with you and having it on you. I keep mine in a little holster. It's on my belt. If something were to happen, something falls on me, or I get pinched by something, or God forbid something worse, if I can at least grab the phone, it's on my person, it's not on the workbench, it's not in the cab of the tractor, it's not someplace that's hard to get to, I may be able to reach somebody by calling them even from a compromised position.
So Shane, tell me what we're going to use this air compressor for.
Well, Andy, this is probably one of the most favorite tools in my shop. It gets used all the time, and more than anything else, it gets used with a blowgun attachment that I can use to blow things clean in and around the tractor or on other equipment that I use frequently in farming as well, like chainsaws. So I have a blowgun, and this is just one type. I have others that have longer reach. And it's important to note when you're using an air compressor and you're using the blowgun to blow things clean, on certain things like air filters that are paper cartridges, it's important to keep that the PSI on the low side. If you have your PSI set at 60, 80 pounds, and it's fully charged and you're trying to blow out an air filter to get it clean, that could be too much pressure, and you run the risk of perforating some of those microscopic pores in the air filter, which would then allow more dust and debris into the engine combustion chamber, which is something you're trying to avoid by having an air filter. So it's important to use it at the right PSI for the job. But yeah, this is absolutely one of the most commonly used things in my shop, and it allows us to use another tool which we have a few types of over here, which is the grease gun, which if you have a tractor and you have farm equipment, you're going to need a grease gun. And this one here is a favorite of mine. This is a pneumatic grease gun, and so this plugs into the coupling on my air compressor hose, and it's very simple to use. Once you've got this connected, just a couple squeezes of the trigger, or you're pumping grease into the grease fitting on your machine. And if it's easier to do, we're more apt to do it.
Sure. And now I'm familiar with the grease gun here, which is sort of the traditional one.
Yeah.
But they are difficult to use.
Yeah, they are, particularly for somebody who has a small reach in the palm of their hand, which mine just barely makes this. So you've got to be able to hold on here to the grip, as well as be able to squeeze the lever. And anybody who's tried to use these on a cooler day like it is today will know that grease doesn't flow as readily on a cold day. So it takes a lot more physical effort to pump the grease out of this. That's where having something like a pneumatic grease gun, assuming you have access to an air compressor and electricity, can make that job a whole lot easier.
So Shane, I see we have different size drip pans here for also different uses.
Yeah.
Tell me about some of these.
Well, this is a standard pan for draining engine oil. One of the things I like about this pan in terms of its design is it's covered on the top with just a hole in the center to catch the oil. It's got a little cap here you can open to let the air out as it's displaced by the oil coming in. You can drain it off up here. But the nice thing about this is that if you drop anything down into the pan beyond the oil, as in the drain plug or the gasket, you're apt to see it. So you can find that and see it readily if it drops in. I use this pan here. This is used more for coolant, antifreeze, which in a lot of tractors, when you go to drain it, the way the drain plug is situated, it tends to come out in an uneven spray, and it can have a wide splash pattern. So having an open drain pan like this allows you to catch a lot more of the fluid that you're changing without a lot of difficulty.
And what would I use this big pan for?
Well, hydraulic transmission fluid, which can be a significant amount of fluid in a tractor. So our hydraulic transmission systems on newer tractors, which typically today is all one system, can contain anywhere from 5, 6, 7 gallons up to 15 gallons of fluid.
Oh, wow.
That's a lot of fluid. That's where this comes in handy. I believe this is 84 quarts. I was able to get this off Amazon. It's very useful. It'll hold a lot of fluid. I use this all the time when I'm changing transmission fluid on tractors. And what's nice about this, the fluid concentrates and goes through the port that's underneath this plug here. Again, we have another plug for air displacement so that the fluid drains freely into the pan. And even nicer, if you want to grab that side, you can see where we have handles here so 2 people can pour it off.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's well designed, makes the job easy. It's not cheap, however. Again, this is over $100 when you factor in shipping.
Okay, and with any of these fluids, I want to definitely check to make sure I dispose of them correctly.
Absolutely. And to that point, especially with something like coolant, antifreeze coolant, you don't want to leave that around. I don't leave it around at all. Once it's drained into the pan, that immediately goes into a storage container that can be sealed. Antifreeze coolant's a glycol solution, it's a sugar-based solution, and animals are drawn to that. And let's face it, around farms we have pets, cats, dogs, as well as other livestock. They're drawn to the taste of that, and it's a nasty death. And certainly we don't want that for our critters that we care so much for on our farms. And oils too. Not only are they potentially hazardous to children and animals on our farms, but they're a fire hazard. So I make provisions to deal with this stuff immediately. I get it into sealed containers, and I get it off the site.
So Shane, you've pointed out several tools that I need to have available in my shop to perform routine maintenance, and I'm just starting to think about some of the costs involved and really wondering, is it worth the investment, or should I really start thinking about just having the dealer or a mechanic perform the routine maintenance?
Well, at the end of the day, there's a certain decision to be made as to what you're comfortable doing. For some people, this is all overwhelming and it may be beyond their skill capacity and their comfort level to do it, and they'll just say, heck, if it involves all this, I'm just going to send it off to the dealer. But on a farm where margins are tight, if you can learn to do these things on your own, and certainly a lot of the tools that are going to be required to do this are going to have uses beyond just the maintenance, it will make sense to invest in those and have them on hand in your operation. We mentioned earlier that just round-trip hauling to and from the farm to the dealer is a significant cost, anywhere from $100, $150, $200, depending on where you live and where your dealer is. Then there's the labor cost in the shop. You're looking at anywhere from, I would say on a low side today, $60 to $75 an hour to $100 and $120, $125 an hour just for the labor. If this is something you can learn to do yourself, that can start to be a significant savings, because these are chores that really should be done on an annual basis. And so I think there's implications there that one needs to consider when doing your annual budget for their operation the maintenance cost on equipment. And so you're either going to pay to have that work done, ideally, or you're going to figure out how to do it yourself. Either way, there's a cost. And you might want to look at, over time, what has more value. And I think another option for people to consider that are just getting started is maybe with a neighbor or a friend who's close by who's in a similar situation, maybe they buy some of this together, or you have the $125 drain pan and I have the air compressor, and we find a time to do these jobs together and help one another out. I think that would be a creative way to getting started in this.
I'm all for working with my neighbors to get the job done.
Yeah.
So I'm going to get my safety gear on, and we'll meet back here and start learning about how to do routine maintenance on the tractor.
All right.
Thank you.